I drove up to Fort Myers, Florida, the other day, and I found this, what looked like an amazing i3, white with the tan, tan seats and cloth seats. It showed really well in the pictures, and it was a really good price. It was a 2014, and it was at a dealer. I get there, and man, did this car look crappy. It was in horrible condition. The roof was all peeling. It had big gouge marks on the left-hand door. You couldn't see any of this in the pictures. And the price they said, I said to the salesman, look, I know you're asking like $10,500 for the car. I'm not even sure if I'd pay you $8,000 for this car. He goes, well, just so you know, I'm not allowed to talk price, but we have a $1,295 dealer fee. And I said, I'm not paying that. And then he goes, well, in addition to that, we have a $1,095 dealer registration fee. I said, well, I'll pay for registration, but like in the state of Connecticut, it's $215 to register a car for 2 years. And then you pay your sales tax on top of that. You're charging $1,100? Yeah, we are. I said, and okay, well, I'm not paying that either. He goes, just so you know, there was this little add-on thing on the dash or on the windshield that said $2,799 dealer prep fee for paint protection and window tinting and on and on and on. I'm like, he said, that's a mandatory fee. I go, mandatory for who? Not for me. I'm out of here. Welcome to another episode of Out of Spec Dave, where today I find myself on the Isle of Capri by the Island Gypsy restaurant with my beautiful 2023 Mach-E rental car. If you haven't seen the episode where what it took for me to actually get that car, you got to watch that, man. That was unbelievable. But today what I want to talk to you a little bit about is what am I doing going forward as far as when I get home in a couple of days, I'm not going to have a car because my Tesla Model X is still out with Kyle. And yes, I can continue to rent cars. So far, I've rented the EV6, I've rented the Bolt, and now I've got this Mach-E. And I could continue to just rent cars, but that wouldn't be any fun. So I've decided to buy a car. Now, yesterday, I put a poll up asking people whether or not I should buy an i3 or a Chevy Volt. Those were the two cars that I brought it down into my choices. I want to tell you how I got to those two choices, and I'm going to reveal which of those two choices I've decided to buy. All right, so first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Let's make 2024 an incredible year. Let's all be nice to each other at superchargers as all these CCS people start getting their adapters and coming over to Tesla. And but listen, as I really wanted to think about what am I going to do with this channel in 2024, one of the things I wanted to do was to focus on more affordable EVs. Not so much, at least this point in the time, as the newer vehicles, but pre-owned. And so I started to take this opportunity while Kyle has my Model X out in Colorado doing some testing. He I don't know how long he's going to have the car for, whether it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks. It really doesn't matter. I could just rent the car and be done with it, and we'll square up. He'll take care of me. Well, however we're going to work it out for me letting him borrow my car. I'm not worried about that, but I'm sort of thinking about why it would be nice to have a third car in the family. Oftentimes Katie comes up to visit, and then I ended up, she doesn't want to get up early in the morning, so I have to Uber to work, or, I'll take the car and she'll Uber down to get the car. Sometimes when cars need to go in for service, I know that my wife's Model Y is going to have to go in for service for the front bumper, which we still haven't fixed yet. Be nice to have a third car. I'd also like to have a third car for just taking it to the airport and, leaving it at the airport, or when I go into Manhattan, to the restaurants or to sporting events or what have you. I'm not loving taking the train these days, so I'll drive in. It'd be good to have a little sort of daily driver that I can commute around in, keep the miles low on the X, and just have a third car. So, and of course, I've definitely wanted to get an electric car, but I haven't explored the concept of an electric car that is either a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, or maybe even one that has a generator. So more on that in a second. My initial thought was this Bolt that I just rented. I knew that they had a stop order, sale order on them because they were having problems with the batteries. And I knew that a lot of the cars were bought back by GM, and we're starting now to see these cars hit the market with new batteries. And I'm talking about, yes, of course, anything prior to 2020 was a mandatory. They did replace the batteries. So if you could find one of those used, that'd be great. But I was looking online and I saw at a dealership in Connecticut about 5 or 6 Bolt EVs, not the EUVs that I rented, but the EVs. And these cars had anywhere between 6,000 and 9,000 miles on them, and they're going for like 14 grand. And while I wanted to spend less than 10,000 on a pre-owned car, just sort of as a baseline for, what could you buy as an electric vehicle for $10,000 or less? You couldn't do that. But it seemed like a tremendously good value when I sort of peeled back the onion on what was really going on with this GM recall on the batteries. I see that there really weren't that many problems with the batteries actually burning houses down. I'm sure it happened. Otherwise, why would they have done this? But they were giving people on the 2020s and newer sort of an option. They pay you like $1,500 and they'll put a software, maybe a limitation that you can only charge it to 80%, or they could actually give you the ability to give them the car back, and it would be a corporate buyback. And for those, they were doing battery replacements. And to me, that'd be really amazing. Imagine if you could get a Bolt, a 2020 or 2021 Bolt for 14 grand that had a brand new battery replaced in it with only 6,000 miles. And then on top of that, in my case, I wouldn't qualify, but if you make $75,000 a year or less, you'll get a $4,000 tax credit, federal tax credit off the price of the car. And then if, depending on what state you live in the state of Connecticut, it's kind of like a percentage thing. I forget how it works, but you could get upwards of another $3,000 state rebate right off the price of the car. So now if you're spending 14 grand for a Chevy Bolt that has a brand new battery with 6,000 miles on it, I'm like, wow, not necessarily for me, but I'd like to showcase to all of you that seems like a heck of a deal. That if you're not making more than 75 grand and you can take advantage of a state tax rebate, you might be able to get one of these cars for like $7,000 or $8,000, maybe $9,000 by the time you pay sales tax on it and everything. That seems like a smoking hot deal to me. So anyway, I went up to this dealership in Connecticut with full intentions of buying one of these cars and making videos on it and getting to know the Bolt. I did own a Bolt EV once before, and it's a while ago, and I liked that little car. I really did. I thought it was cute. I know a number of you are probably like, oh, come on, Dave, you can't like that car. It only charges at 55 kilowatts. But for the use case, if you're daily driving it and you have a level 2 at home, the thing's got like 250 miles of range. It's magically efficient. It's a easy to drive around, very zippy and all of that. So why not go check it out? So anyway, I go up there. I'm like ready to buy this car. And they had about 4 or 5 of them. And it was like one of those mornings where, like you put a beer mug in your freezer and it gets that frost on the outside. It was like a frosty morning. And the car was covered in frost. And it looked good. It was a black one with, they had 2 black ones that I liked. And they were just the LTs. They weren't the Premiers. But one had 6,000 miles, one had 9,000 miles. And the salesperson immediately told me, listen, I need to disclose the fact that this car had hail damage. And one of the lessons I've learned over the years is never buy a used car in the rain, because the rain masks scratches. It makes everything look better. It just does. But the one thing that I just learned over the last week was never buy a car that has frosting on it, like the from the ice. Because I looked at it and I said, well, listen, I really appreciate you telling me that. I said, I would have liked you to have been transparent on your website. Dealers sometimes, they want to get you in the shop. I mean, whatever. You just got to be really careful with dealers. And there's going to be more on that in a minute. But, everything was looking good. I test drove the car. I couldn't see any hail damage with that. But again, there was this coating of ice on it. And so I went in and I was ready to buy the car. And I just, and I wanted to go out and look at it one more time. And by the time I got in there right at 9 o'clock. And the sun had come up. Now it was about 10 o'clock. And the sun started to melt the ice. And lo and behold, underneath this little layer of ice, you could see pot marks, like a really bad case of someone having acne all over their face. And I was like, oh my goodness. They were very tiny little pinholes, but in certain light, it was nasty. It was just like, there's no way I'm going to own that car. And it not only was on the hood, but it was on the roof as well, because it was, it didn't have a glass roof or anything like that. And then it was like, as good a deal as that is, and I know that doesn't have anything to do with, the drivability of the car. And, if you're going to keep the car for a long time, maybe you grab one of those, right? Who the heck cares if you can get it for $7 or $8 grand after taxes? But for me, I'm probably going to flip this car, right? So I don't want to own a car that has a corporate buyback title, which is, normally if there's a lemon law title or if there was a repossessed or flood damage title, I wouldn't touch those. But in this particular case with a corporate buyback title where it specifically was bought back by GM to replace the battery, I'm all in on that. And I think you should be as well if you're considering one of these as just a third car or an affordable EV to have as your first. So I was so disappointed when I saw the hail marks. But what it tells you is you have to be super careful when you're buying a pre-owned car, especially if you're dealing with a dealer who's far away and you can't see it. Definitely do FaceTime. Definitely look at the pictures. Don't look at cars in the rain, and don't look at cars that have beer mug frosting on them either. But I learned a lesson there, and I pulled out on that deal, and that wasn't good. So, one of the other things that I had noticed though in the Bolt EV, not that this is a big deal, but I really like the EUV layout better. My knee was hitting the center console where it kind of teardrops down a little bit, and although I could live with that, it's no big deal. I would have bought that car, spending a little bit more money than I thought I really wanted to. Let's say 14 grand plus tax and all of that. But it seemed like such a great value at that price. And I can't even imagine if I qualified for the federal tax credit and what have you. So I just passed on it. I said, you know what? And my heart really was into an i3, a BMW i3. I've owned a couple of them. Kathy hates the way they look. I think they're so cool. They got these little rear suicide doors. I know it's not a pure EV. It's got this little range extender engine in it. Or you can get the BEV version of it. You can get the BEV version or the Rex version. But for me, because of where I live, if I want to be able to take this car into Manhattan, let it sit there, and then drive it home with a BEV version, I better be at 100% if I'm honest so I'll be able to make it home. And so I wasn't really going to look at any BEVs, but one came up I think it was in Massachusetts. It was an Electronaut 2014 fully loaded BEV, really good deal, and cute little car. It had everything on it, and I was really toying with buying that car. This was from a private seller. The guy was into it. He understood what he had. He's taking care of the car. It's probably still available if any of you are interested. I would encourage you to check it out because, I don't know that it's going to become a collector's item per se, but the i3 to me is like, here's BMW putting all their resources into this car. I mean, it's just, you know, the carbon fiber chassis, the technology that went into this car was so far ahead of its time. These things were like 54 grand new. And here you can buy one for like 10 grand, with a range extender engine. And this particular Electronaut car, I think, was around that 10 grand mark. But it was the BEV. And I just, as much as I wanted that car and I knew it was a special car and there was a story to be told there, I just said, you know what, I really, if I'm going to get an i3, I need to get the Rex just for my own personal use case. I want to drive it to the airport. I want to leave it there with Vampire Drain. You know, the last thing I need to do is come back and not have enough range to get home. The 2014s themselves did not come with DC fast charging. It was an option. In 2015, they put the DC fast charging in as standard. So be careful with that if you're looking at 2014s. Most of the time, you won't really DC fast charge a little car like this. Most of the time on a trip, you can take these on a road trip. If you coat them, you can actually kick the gas engine on at 75% state of charge. There's a little way to kind of mod these cars, and that way you can preserve your batteries to use that to get up the hills. And so, I mean, you know, it's kind of a fun little car, quirky little car. Then I found one out in Allentown from a private seller, 9 grand, but it had the check engine light on it, and it was actually from a viewer. Hey, Danny, you know, and I really was looking to buy that car, but I can't buy a car with a check engine light on it. And bringing a car into state, I have to get the emissions tested. I have to get, you know, they won't pass the emissions. So it turns out that there's a little part for the door on the door lock that needs to be fixed. The owner of the i3 out in Pennsylvania, he took it into BMW to check it out to see what the problem was, and the part's on back order. So that car's off the table for me. And then I found another one. This is where sort of the dealer games start kicking in here. I found another one in Tampa, Florida, where my daughter Katie lives. And I was like, hey, Katie, can you go over and check out this car? It's like, you know, really inexpensive, and it looks pretty good on paper and in the pictures. But these guys they wanted like whatever the price was for the car. Then they wanted a $1,295 dealer fee. Then there was a registration fee. And then I was like, all right, that car's off the table. And then I found another one out in Kansas. And I've been dealing with some car dealers in New Jersey recently that are they're just, I don't know. It just doesn't, I drive there, I look at a car, it's not what they say it is. There's the bait and switch, all these tactics. It's just tiring, these car dealerships. So anyway, this i3 out in Kansas, it was a really good deal, and I was ready to buy the car. It had a clean auto check, but I decided to, you know, there's that leap of faith when I had a really good feeling with the salesperson, and they did work with me as far as there were really no dealer fees, and it was just refreshing. These Midwesterners, man, God bless them, right? You know, I'm not saying they're all like that out there, but this one in particular was a really super nice people, and had a clean auto check. But there was something in my gut that said, you know what, pull a Carfax on it anyway. And I did, and it showed up that it had a minor accident. Minor damage reported into the front left. And, you know, I don't, like, I'm okay owning that Bolt with the title that is marked as a corporate buyback because of the battery, as long as the battery was swapped out. But I don't want to buy a hit car. I don't want to do that because I'm going to get in it, and I know I'm going to get caught up in the emotion, and I'm probably going to pay too much, and I'm going to take a loss. And the whole goal here on this little third car is to just have it while Kyle has my Model X, make some videos with it, and then decide if it makes sense to keep it. Maybe I'll bring it down here to Florida and just you know, have it down here as a car that we can fly in and use, because renting cars down here, if anyone saw my latest video, you know it's a hassle to rent cars down here. So I definitely did not want to you know, to get involved with renting a car again. Anyway, so Yeah, I was just sort of disappointed. At one point, I said, even if it's hit on the Carfax and it's not hit on the auto check, that's okay. Maybe there's something wrong. And I slept on it. I even sent over my driver's license, my insurance card, and I was ready to buy it and have it shipped. And I was going to call my normal shipping company. I still needed a video for all of you on how to ship a car. But, you know, I slept on it and I just pulled out. I said, you know what? It's still a lot of money. It was well over, you know, the whole thing was going to be 14 grand plus $1,100 to ship it, plus tax, plus registration. You know, this is not in the spirit of me buying a car for under 10 grand. So I pulled out on that. You know, the Bolt EV, as great a value as it is, I just signed that off. And, you know, there's something in the back of my mind, though, that I have been thinking about is a Volt, a Chevy Volt. And, you know, similar to the i3, this was kind of a car that has a place in history in terms of being brought out as an EV with a gas engine that's really a generator, but it has this special decoupler that it's a really cool drivetrain. And I've always liked the look of the Volts. And most people I've ever talked to that have Volts are like, these things are great. And, you know, they stopped making them just a few years ago. And they had a good run. There were 2 generations of them. I've heard nothing but good things about those cars. Yes, they only have enough electric range to go 38 miles. But for what I am looking to do, I could drive it to work every single day, plug it in at home every single day, and I'll never burn any, you know, dyno juice with the Volt. And so I'm thinking that might be a good car. In the meantime, I find another i3 that is out in New Jersey from actually a viewer, and really good value car. And you know, I was ready to buy it. It was like 8 grand, and it had 110,000 miles on it. It's a fantastic little car, but it has a little bit of damage in the front that wasn't fixed. You could still see it. It's just like banged into in a parking garage in New York City. No big deal, but you know, I was like, I don't really know. But then I was talking to Kathy, and I put this poll up the other day as to whether or not I should buy as my extra car. Oh, and by the way, I should say, I just don't want a Leaf. I don't, you know, Kyle's got a Leaf. We've covered that on the channel. The i3 is, even though I've had a couple, I've never really covered the i3 on the channel. But I was really kind of getting excited about the Volt. Again, back to the Leaf for a second. Chatamo is, you know, if you're going to be DC fast charging that, not great. The cheap ones don't have that greater range, so I'd be in that similar situation with a BEV i3. And, you know, if you start getting into the 2017 BEVs, then you get 110, 120 miles of range, but they start getting up there in price again. So I really wanted to kind of, you know, keep it to a 2014, 15, or 16. The sweet spot was a 2015 range extender i3. And this, I found this one in New Jersey, and I was ready to buy it. And then I found on Facebook Marketplace what I think might be a cream puff Volt. And this is, now I say cream puff and I say it has 140,000 miles on it. You know, that sort of seems like an oxymoron, right? But this car looks super clean in the pictures, and it's with a dealer, but it's not like a dealer that has a brick and mortar dealer. He's just a state licensed dealer in the state of Connecticut that buys and sells cars. And so, you know, I look at the pictures on this car, and he's asking $6,900 for it. I offered him $4 grand because of the mileage. We settled on $5,500, and I'm buying it. Now, I've got the certified check already, and I've pulled the plug on, well, forget the Leaf. I pulled the plug on the Bolt. I pulled the plug on the i3. And why? It's really funny. Kathy pulled me aside and she says, Dave, I really don't like the i3. I just don't like it. I don't like anything about it. I think it's a weird looking car. I hear that they break down a lot. You see the people in the comments on the poll, they're saying, don't get a Volt, don't get an i3. You're gonna be running into all kinds of issues. And I said, yeah, but honey, this Volt has 140,000 miles on it. She's like, I like the car. It's white with cloth seats, and it just seems like a regular car that is not, so I said, you know what, let's go down the Volt path. So, I appreciate you sticking with me through all of these car transactions. Those were my trials and tribulations over the last week or so. This is the way I've been spending a lot of my vacation, which for me is relaxing. I sit on the beach, I make phone calls, I get in the car, I drive here and drive there. Oh, there was one other car that I forgot to talk to you about. The Mitsubishi i-MiEV. I believe it was a 2012 and really cheap, like $4,000. And everybody I've ever talked to about the i-MiEV, they love the i-MiEV. And I showed it to Kathy, and she burst out laughing. And she's like, no way am I letting you park that in our driveway. And so the i-MiEV was out. Thanks again for watching another episode of Out of Spec Dave, everyone. Next stop is my new 2015 Chevy Volt with 140,000 miles on it. I can't wait to share it with everyone and make some great videos about this car. I really like it, I must admit. So take care now. Bye-bye.